I've been working on myself since 2006. Okay, I'm originally from Switzerland, the French part of Switzerland. Started out extremely shy. That's back in 2006, 15 years ago. And I've been on this 15-year journey of really improving at first my social skills and then all areas of life. And since 2010, I've been traveling around the world teaching this to people just like yourselves, where my typical week prior to this whole situation that we're in was every single week I'm in a new country, flying into a new city. I arrive, I'm doing an event on Thursday, usually a free event, then working with clients at night after that. Friday, working all day, all night, Saturday, Sunday, more events, and then it's off to the next city, and that has been my life for, again, a decade. Okay, literally traveling around, seeing tens of thousands of people face to face, millions online if you count social media and YouTube, and it's reached a point where I've seen it all. Okay, when it comes to true transformation, and this is something that seems to be forgotten nowadays, is, it's 2021, and if you go on social media, you go on YouTube, everyone and their mom is a coach, right? Everyone and their mom, and they have a few clients, and I think that's cool. I think it's great, okay? I support anyone who wants to be of service, who wants to be a coach. However, what we tend to forget is, in order to be a coach, you do need to have certain reference experiences in terms of how many people you've actually coached. You can't say you're a coach if you have, say, one client or two, okay? You need a ton of references. That's my job. Since 2010, tens of thousands of references, face-to-face like this. No matter who you are, what you're dealing with, being very modest, I've seen it before and I've dealt with it before. This used to be me. Okay, this was me back, again, in my early days. Some of those photos were actually a couple years in already working on myself. And like I've said, if I really want to describe to you the mindset that I used to live in, perhaps this was you, perhaps this is you, I was extremely shy and stifled, like since as far as I can remember, since I was a kid. Right? Since probably the age of 5, 6 at school, suddenly something happened and I decided to just clam up. And I got so socially shy and awkward that I even experienced social anxiety around family members. Everyone's like, oh, I'm kind of scared to go say hi to someone new. I was scared for a holiday, a family gathering when, oh, the cousins and the aunts and grandparents, everyone's coming, like that would give me anxiety. People are looking forward to the holidays, not me. Okay, same at school, same later on in again, high school, university, extremely shy. That was the reality that I lived in. I would not, and this is why I also want to give everyone here some props, I would not have made it out to an event like this, especially nowadays with everything going on. Even if this event was right outside my house, say back in Switzerland, I'd be way too scared to even walk outside the door and show up in person because I would be thinking, everyone in this crowd's now judging me, staring at me, oh, where do I stand? I'd be sitting in the back, probably in the shadows, scared, and as soon as perhaps the speaker would stare in my direction, I would look down or hide under the table. It was that bad. And I know this can be a little hard to believe because you see the videos now and you're like, okay, that's cool, what can I learn? But I really want to show you this to hammer the point home that it's possible. And this is huge. This is the foundation when it comes to true personal transformation. You have to truly, deep down inside, gun to the head, what's the truth, believe that you can do it. And I can guarantee you, because you're here, there's definitely a part of you that believes. However, this is what I've noticed in so many clients, you believe that you can only change a little bit. You'll see some people do like a full 180 and you're like, whoa, that's crazy and inspiring. But on your end, you're like, well, if I do the same thing as that person, maybe I'll get a 10% result. And there's not that true belief that you can become, again, that dream ideal version of yourself. And if you don't believe it, it doesn't matter what you hear here today, it doesn't matter what content or what routines or what techniques you add to your life, you're not going to change more than what you actually believe. So I'm going to show you here at first, and we're going to be going really deep. Think of this whole speech here as this odyssey, diving into, again, my journeys, things I've seen in clients, how things have evolved, epiphanies I've had. Take this with you. But it all starts with the earlier days, okay? That used to be me, and if you see this and in your mind you're thinking, wow, I'm a little bit better than that, good. If you're a little bit better than that, if you put the work in, you, if you perhaps look up to me here, should be better than me. Okay, so I went from that to living my dream life. Okay, no joke. In Switzerland, again, when I was shy, I would lie in bed and I'd think about all the cool things like, oh, if I could have cool friends, if I could travel, if I could have different relationships, if I could meet someone, if I could do all these cool things, but I'm stuck in Switzerland. This is the stuff I would dream of and fantasize about every single day, every single night, and it made it happen. Okay? Life of my dreams, and I've taught it to, once more, thousands of clients. This used to be me, a little bit more. My favorite photo, if you've been following, by the way, some of my YouTube lives, is the cactus photo. Literally, I think that photo is just the most classic photo of all time. I will keep showing this photo till the day I die. I'm like, that used to be me. And I don't know how I thought at the time that was a good idea. I'm like, whoa, see this cactus? If I just stood next to it, that'd be the coolest. It just, okay. That used to be me too. Okay, up here in the corner of the cap, that's when I first moved to Los Angeles. All right, then somehow I decided it cool to dye my hair. On the very right, that was in Phoenix when I first started going out and working on my social skills with the oversized white jacket and this weird necklace. And literally in that photo, I thought I was so cool, by the way. That's a few years in, already working on myself. I thought I was so cool. I was like, I got this handled. If you see that and you're like, wow, I'm a little bit better off, good. Because that's a few years in of me already working on myself intensively. Okay, and then of course at the bottom, Jeff's good old van. Okay, that's my background. I also was very childlike when I started out and very destructive during a certain period of time. Okay, the video I'm going to crack into here, this is a short one. This is in San Francisco in a taxi cab with Owen. And I'd gone out the night before, and I was drinking at the time, drank way too much, and he filmed this the next day. And while filming this, we talked about it after, it's like, you will want to cherish this footage, you'll be able to show the transformation, da-da-da. And in the moment, I'm just some kid, I'm like, I guess so, okay. And here I am showing it. Okay, so this here was where I was at a few years in. You're gonna see the type of mentality. It's like, oh, that literally looks and sounds like a dumb kid. Notice once more the change, and put yourself there in the same shoes. Like, are you further along than that? And if so, you can do so much better. If that kid can turn into this, okay, if that little caterpillar can turn into a butterfly, so can you.
How do you feel right now?
Pretty good. Well, if I drank Monster, I'd feel probably really good. Yeah. But unfortunately, I'm forced to live off vitamin D, which doesn't help. Monster would.
Beast mode tonight. Beast mode.
Never again will the beast be unleashed. So you're making me laugh and feel even worse. Like, no laughing, no talking.
Beast mode. I'll be out beasting. Sleeping on Mike's couch.
This is me starting to travel with Owen, helping him out on different events. That's my background. Gets worse.
You can see it has like strange rust stains on the front, and actually, yo, what's that? Like trash. Body Factory. What do you have to say for yourself? That's what you have to say for yourself. A random metal bar. What do you guys think? Yo, whoever can guess correctly what this metal bar is for will get a, I don't know, a personal email from Julien.
I was like 100. That's so cool, dude. Imagine.
I literally thought I looked so cool, by the way. I'd wear that all the time, and I thought I was like a hunter, and literally walked around thinking I was a hunter. Now, okay, that's the background, okay? And it's so key, by the way. There's more of this, but we always tend to compare ourselves with people where they are now, and we're like, oh, how could I ever be that or do this? And everyone does this, by the way. But you gotta train yourself to look behind the scenes, okay? You right now, if you're just starting out, or even just a few years in, that's probably where you're at. And think of the potential of what you could actually become. It's 100% possible, okay? No one's cut from a different cloth. What one person can do, another person can do. You know, even look at people who are like, say, more successful, like, how do they do it, right? Or how are they so disciplined? Da-da-da. It's like, you can do that too. And you really got to believe it and let go of any kind of limitations that tell you maybe it's different for you. Okay? Now, this here was just in terms of the vibe, starting out. Also, when I started working and, say, recording myself or doing seminars, I was so shy stifled I almost wasn't able to, and I almost wasn't fully hired because of it. There was a moment, no joke, where Owen sat me down. Again, I was traveling around helping him, those videos there, and he's like, okay, let's start recording some actual vlogs. Okay, let's go on YouTube. Social media is going to be this thing. Let's put videos out there. And I could not talk in front of a camera. The camera and the fact that I knew people would see it triggered the exact same anxiety that I'd been working on overcoming for the past few years. But it was amplified, right? Because there's a certain anxiety where you're like, okay, if I just go talk to someone, I'm a little anxious, but you can kind of work through that. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to do this, and it determines, you know, your career, your life, and hundreds or thousands of people or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands are going to see it. Don't mess it up. Go. And then you're staring at this thing that's a camera, and you're like, there's no reaction. I can't read it. Am I doing good? Couldn't. Okay, this was one of the first attempts. I created this little blog back then. It was called JulienLife.com. And I'm like, okay, I just need to record, no joke, this is it, a 30-second welcome video where you just arrive on the site, you see me, and I'm like, hey, I'm Julien, working with Owen. If you want to hear some cool updates, enjoy. That's it. This is what happened.
Yeah? This is Julien. Welcome to my blog. I'm here in Los Angeles right now on the rooftop of my apartment, as you can tell by the view in the background. And I want to share with you here some of my ideas, experiences, you know, anything that has been working for me and that will hopefully help you out as well. So check the blog. I'll be updating it regularly every Tuesday and Thursday, and I hope you enjoy. One more take, one more take. So check the blog. I'll be updating it regularly with... This is Julien. Welcome to my blog. I'm here in Los Angeles right now on the rooftop of my... This is Julien. Welcome to my blog. I'm here in Los Angeles right now on the rooftop of my apartment, as you can tell by the view in the background.
Tried on the rooftop, and then I'm like, okay, time to do an actual vlog. And the first time I tried was San Francisco, way too scared to do it. I set up the camera, people were staring, couldn't do it. Then went on this mini European tour where I did Copenhagen, Stockholm, and then Prague. And I tried recording this is my very first vlog, in all those cities. Couldn't in San Francisco, couldn't in Copenhagen, couldn't in Sweden. This is going to be the Swedish attempt. And finally I could in Prague, and if you've been following me for a long time, that was the very first video I ever put out, and it was called The Moment of Realness. Okay, so this is me trying to do this moment of realness. Show up, set up, this is in Sweden, cameras on, way too shy, way too scared. Okay, what up? Hi. Okay, wait, let me get in soon. This is Julien, and I want to talk about some of the basic, this is so weird. Couldn't do it. And again, just staring there, it's like people walking by, I'd be all quiet, I'm like, we got to do it again, another take, and would just fail, okay? And then some other, last little attempt here.
Thoughts?
That was perfect.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in this one. Like using a shtick versus just being yourself, and especially being filmed, be yourself, move things forward, and being yourself, integrity, instead of using the shtick and moving things forward. So still having your boundaries.
Yeah.
So same thing, couldn't even look into the camera, stuttering a bit, right? It's like, oh, and this, like wavering. That's where I come from. And this here is already 10 times better than my earlier days. This is like 2010, 11. That's already 4 years in working on myself. Okay? Not to put a negative label, I wasn't the most hard case person I've seen, but I was definitely a hard case newbie. But I did have some things going for me that allowed me to move up and surpass people who were even a bit ahead of me when I first started. Okay? So, there we go for the clips, and I hope you a little clap for at least those. Now, so let's get into some of the concepts here, okay? The first one, and you can sense it from these clips, and even if you've been following me after that, some of the other videos I put on the few years after, the frame overall is very competitive. This is huge, okay? These clips here, the whole theme is I'm in a very competitive state, where here I am, and it's me versus whoever's going to watch this video, where I immediately assume that people are out to get me, people are judging me, people are criticizing me, people are going to think something very negative in me unless I prove them wrong. And it's this whole battle, me versus. It would happen even back in the day on stage. I'd go in front of a crowd like this, and instead of being like, okay, how's it going? Welcome, everyone. I would be preparing at the back like, okay, must conquer, must dominate. They all hate me. They're all going to think I'm not good enough unless I prove them wrong. And I'd go up, and it'd just be this very forced tonality. Okay? You can optimize this paradigm. And that's what I did at first. It was me versus, same worries, same insecurities, but I'd be battling against it. Okay, can anyone relate so far, by the way? Raise your hand if so, right? Or you can also test yourself. If you walk into a new venue, right? Say you go out, you want to meet someone. You walk into a venue, how do you experience it? For a lot of people, it's you walk in and suddenly, right? Your heart starts beating. You start looking around. You're like, are people staring? Where do I stand? Do I fit in? What's okay? Oh, maybe I should go over there. Oh, who should I say hi to? And it's you versus. It's this very hostile environment, this very scary environment, right? And then, from that place, what do people do? They try to work on their social skills, right? They try to get out of their head. They try to stop worrying. They try to build momentum, so on and so forth. But they're still in that competitive state. As opposed to, and you can achieve this, walking into a venue and instead of that immediate, oh, me versus, it's, everyone's on my side. Hey, how's it going? And just completely at ease. Okay? That collaborative state is where you want to move towards. And you've all had glimpses of it. Right? It's crazy too. Let me know if you have this experience. You go out, and at first it's very competitive. You're like, oh my God, it's such a scary environment. Say you take some action, maybe 30 minutes later, maybe an hour later. Say you get in state. You're in the zone, same environment, but suddenly you see it completely differently, no? Suddenly you're having fun, you're looking around, it's like everyone's my friend because you got yourself in that other state. Anyone experience that? Same environment that was so scary at first, later on you feel very comfortable in it, right? Shifting from competitive to collaborative. And we're going to go deeper on that, but that is definitely the theme here. Now, the other one that I mentioned is I kept going. Okay, there's a few things, especially this is for those of you who are starting out, that you really need to get in check. Number one, be selfish. Meaning, want this for you. That's something I had. And this is something, funny enough, with social media that less and less people have, where you see, for example, someone on YouTube, someone on Instagram, someone you might be like, oh, I want to learn that. I want to learn from that person. I want to be like that. And instead of taking that and applying it, you just end up worshiping that person. Right? Oh, let me learn more about this. Let me see them more. Oh, let's see what they're doing. Other people. And you never take it and apply it to yourself. For me, yeah, I look up to other people. I'm inspired by other people. But I always take what I'm learning and I apply it to me. You got to be selfish. It's like, no. I'm not using all this as another kind of fantasy watching this cool movie. It's I'm going to do it so my life becomes the movie. And once more, you also got to believe that's possible. If you're like, well, maybe my life could be a little bit better, but it won't be as cool as that person's movie, BS. No matter who you look up to, you can live just as epic of a life. If you apply it, if you're selfish. So even throughout this whole weekend, this whole event, everything you're hearing from me or the other speakers, ask yourself, how can I apply this to my life? How can I incorporate this? How can I do that? How can I be like that? Me. This is the one circumstance where you can always just say, bring it back to me and actually be selfish. The other thing, being selfish, is being relentless. Keep at it. Right? So many people give up or start feeling sorry for themselves. This is very classic if you're someone who's in a state of grief or victimhood. Right? I talk about this in my mentoring program. There's grief. Okay, you can say grief, fear, and anger. Grief is the victim land, where it's a very disempowering force, right? You might take some action and maybe you get a couple rejections. Or you might try recording a video like this and the first few tries don't really work. And every time it doesn't work, you just feel down and a little bit more down, and there's like this force pulling you down, and then you're like, oh, screw it. And you just feel sorry for yourself and you go cry yourself to sleep. That's one. Instead, use that as motivational fuel. And you can actually shoot up, instead of grief, to a more productive anger. Where one person, that might happen, they're like, oh, it sucks, it's so hard. The other person, that happens, they're like, again. Oh, it doesn't work? Again. And every time they fail, they use that as fuel. I've seen it for years too when people go out, right? It's like they go out, hey, nice to meet you, and they're like, no, thanks. And they're like, okay, let me go home. The other one's like, again, let's do this. They use it as fuel. The things that will get you ahead are very simple, but difficult to execute on. Okay? Be selfish. Don't go into grief, keep going. And then number 3, and this is huge, take responsibility, meaning it's on you. Never look for someone to do it for you. And this here links to, of course, victimhood. You hear this, right? If you're a victim, you're giving your power away. And if your power is in the hands of someone else or some circumstance, there's nothing you can do about it. But here's a very subtle approach that people who are still in that state take, even in the self-help world. They're still victims, right? It's like, oh, I suck, I can't do it on my own. And then what do? They look for a mentor. They look for a coach. They look for a program to do it for them. But that doesn't get to the cause because you're still a victim. What you're simply doing is, I don't have any power. I'm so helpless and powerless, right? This learned helplessness. It's other people. I would if that didn't happen, or if this person didn't do that. I'm so powerless. And then you find out about self-help and you're like, coach, do it for me. Now let's just say the coach actually does some stuff for you. Nothing truly ever changes because the power is now on the coach, not you. So yes, you got to get mentors and coaches. Of course, I mean, you're insane if you don't, but never expect them to do it for you. Get the guidance, get the feedback. It'll obliterate so many blind spots, but the responsibility is always on you. You got to reclaim that power. Okay? And this applies no matter what excuses or shortcomings you may have. Right? I had so many excuses back then too. I'm like, oh, I'm too shy, so on and so forth. I'm like, no, I can do this. On me. It's very easy to fall into this victim trap because you just give your power away and it just lets you off the hook. Instead of being like, oh, I could actually improve, it's, well, I could, but, and you just hand your excuse off to someone or a situation. Reclaim the power. Right now, there's nothing stopping you from enhancing whatever aspect of your life it is. Nothing. And it's fully in your control. Nothing that happened to you in the past is also hindering that. It only is if you believe it. And those were fortunately some stuff that I had. I had that going for me. Very, very lucky. I'm like, you know what? I had that persistence. Like for me, it was so bad before this that I couldn't go back. There was no alternative. And funny enough, I've said this for years, there really isn't, right? You know about this now. You've seen behind the curtain. If you don't take action on a lot of this content, on a lot of these ideas, now that you see the way, you see the path, you're going to live every single day of your life knowing that you could have. You're going to live it in regret, and you're going to try to rationalize your way out of it. Right? You've seen Beyond the Curtain. Everyone see the movie Wizard of Oz? Right? You've seen Beyond the Curtain. You can't go back. I can actually improve my life. If you don't, now you're screwed. You wish you could go back before finding out about all this and live in blissful denial, but now it's too late. Now that you know there's actually a path, if you don't take it, your life will be very, very, very miserable. More than those who don't even know about self-help, because you know there's a path that you're not taking. I reminded myself that all the time, like there is no going back. Right? Although yes, it's a fun process. So especially when it comes to socializing, it's fun, but also very serious. For me, it was life or death. Like I put myself in situations that scared me so much in order to grow, because even though that might be scary and uncomfortable, it beats the alternative. Okay? And then I was also very fortunate where I took a lot of action. I was able to know in terms of myself what my strengths and shortcomings were and how to balance that out to still take action. And I put my ego aside and I would always, always, always look and ask for help. No matter what. Even if the help or feedback that I got wasn't necessarily what I wanted to hear. The more challenging, the better. Okay, and this is actually very important. I see this sometimes too, say on the mentoring program, where someone will start and then it's like a few weeks in and changes start seeping in. And when change seeps in, there's good stuff, of course, but there's also some chaos, right? If you right now step into whatever it is, that ideal version of yourself, there's going to be a lot of benefits, but in terms of how your life is right now, there's also going to be some adversity and some chaos, right? It's not all going to be peachy. And what people do is when they enter that phase and suddenly, ooh, you know, things are kind of changing, or people are reacting to me, or oh, there's this friend we were really close with, we're a little bit less friends now, is something going bad? They go back to that. No. If you want to change, if you want to transform, whatever your current life situation is now, your current circumstances are here now, you want to destroy that. There is going to be adversity. There's going to be some chaos because you're going against that. If it was all peachy and comfortable, that's you staying in your comfort zone. So you keep going. Most people wouldn't. Okay? If it does get uncomfortable, good. If people around you suddenly start looking at you differently, good. And good and bad, good. Don't go back to how things were before. Keep on going. Okay, so those were the mindsets that I had starting out. And I just went really hard. Okay, and I went really hard in this competitive state of mind. Okay, this competitive, you could say, frame. And you can optimize that, and that, funny enough, is where a lot of the self-help industry is at today, and the socializing, social skills industry is here today. Okay, and I'll give you some evolutions over the years. So if you just take social skills or anything, basically just write this down, okay? The truth changes, you could write down, or the advice changes as you grow. And one thing that'll keep people trapped is they'll know that it's changing, but their comfort zone will be just hanging on to old advice, and they just won't seek out the new stuff. Okay, so one thing that I had going for me, that Owen has going, is we're always seeking the latest technology, the most cutting edge information, and we're never just like, okay, this is it. We just keep on growing and growing and growing. And if there is a better way, we will immediately implement it, and there will be no ego attachment to old ways that weren't as efficient. Here's a classic example of that. If you take social skills, way back in the day, right, this is like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, everything was about your lines. Right? Hey, learn these lines and you'll be great socially. And people would memorize lines and try to perfect lines and even go online on different message boards and exchange notes over optimizing their lines. They'd even have little stories and shticks and routines that they would perfect. And that there was, at the time, the best advice when it comes to social skills. Okay, I started working on myself towards the later end of that, but that's how I started out. Right? When I started, oh my God, I'm so shy, I want to talk to people, I went online and I started looking up all these little lines. And I started perfecting them. Right? The first time I ever said hi to a stranger, I used this old line. It was this old opener called the David Bowie opener. You ever hear that one? Right? I thought, by the way, this is the coolest magical line that's going to get any stranger to like me. And hearing it now, you're just like, what were you thinking? This is it. You go up to a stranger and you're like, hey, so do you like David Bowie? Right? They're like, I guess so. And you're like, well, you know, my sister has a poster of David Bowie on her wall, and he's kind of old, right? Is it weird that she likes older men? That was it. That was it. Now, I'm from Switzerland, so I changed it to JulienHimself, and a French guy, and I did the same thing. And I would, no joke, I'd be in my room, and I'd be writing it out word for word, including the pauses, everything, and I'd be practicing it out loud on repeat. I probably said it, no joke, 200 times in my room before ever even going out and attempting to say it to a stranger. That's the reality I was in. Okay, so all about the lines, all about the lines. And then you'd look online and no joke, people would post their little story, there'd be tweaks, someone would be like, you know, put a pause there instead, and there'd be other cool stories, and there was one where it's like the best friend test. Hear that? Like, oh, are you guys best friends because you have the same facial expressions? Ha 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 ha. That was one where everyone was like, that's amazing. Okay? So practice all that. If you want just a link to my whole journey, once I'd said it 200 times out loud, I finally went out. I'm like, this is it. You're finally going to ask someone if they like David Bowie or JulienHimself. And I'd walk out in the street, and then it was a few weeks of me walking around unable to ask anyone this question. Unable. Way too scared. I'd walk around and, you know, this is like during the day, so people are like, no, let me say hi to this person. And I'd be too scared, and they'd pass me, and then I tried to like follow them. I like look for a better opportunity to say hi, and I was just this creepy person, no joke, walking around like trying to ask someone like, do you like David Bowie? And just like way too scared for weeks. Then I finally surrounded myself with people who were taking action, right? They gave me the kick in the butt to finally do it, and I asked the very first person ever if they liked JulienHimself. And it lasted 30 seconds. I was like, oh, do you like this? And they were like, I guess so. Like, is it weird if my sister did it? Like, no, I guess that's cool, you know, he makes music. And then I was very ballsy. And I'm like, let me follow up with the next one. By the way, are you guys best friends? And they're like, yes. I'm like, oh, you make the same facial expressions. Ha, have a good one. And I left. 30 seconds. That was the first time I ever said hi to a stranger. Now, that was the buildup, okay? And at the time, once more, it was all about the stories and lines. One thing I did have going for me then, by the way, is I celebrated those 30 seconds for, I want to say, weeks. Most people would be like, oh, it's nothing, it's just 30 seconds. For me, comparing it to the old me, I'm like, this was such a huge achievement. I thought I was a god after that. I'm like, I can do anything. Like if I ask someone if they like Johnny 80 Day, I can do anything. Now, things evolved from there. Okay, everyone's like, well, you know what, I guess when it comes to social skills, it's cool if you use some lines and all, but then you're still giving your power away to the lines. It doesn't really change who you are as a person in terms of core confidence, right? Because you're still telling yourself, I'm not good enough, I can't say hi to strangers unless I have this magical line. So the power is in the line. All right, it also comes off very creepy. That was the frame. So then people started shifting to, well, instead of taking these pre-made lines and stories, make up your own. And I went through this whole shift as well. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I got to make it my stories. So instead of saying, are you best friends or David Bowie, I started writing stuff down on my own, right? And now what was the new way that I said hi to people? Like, excuse me, do you speak French? I'd say this in French, right? Because, again, Switzerland. They'd be like, yes, cool, nice to meet you. And it shifted to that. And then I'd experiment around and have my own stories. But it was still in the lines. Then it shifted to, hey, it's not about the lines, whether it's yours or someone else's. It's about the principles underlying those lines. If you actually work on confidence directly, it doesn't matter what you say. So notice how there's been a shift now in the advice. It's all about the lines. No, it's about how you say the lines, sub-communications, principles, so on and so forth. And that there was, and still is to a massive extent today, where the advice is. And that there produces a lot more results. Right? You also hear a lot of state management techniques, right? Building momentum. You know, there's all these, like, there was a video we put out, like the 3 Ps, right? There's videos like, okay, how to get out of your own head, how to never run out of things to say, right? And so on and so forth. And there's all these techniques when it comes to state management. Oh, if you feel stifled. Oh, if you feel like that person's outside your league, do this, do this, do this. Okay? Oh, you go out and you feel in a very competitive state, build momentum, talk to a bunch of people, and you'll get in a collaborative state. And that's all great too. However, it then evolved. And this is why you've been hearing me talk about for years now, Owen talk about for years now, letting go. And it baffles me when I mention, for example, oh, here's a video and I talk about letting go, and say it's on YouTube, and there might be a comment like, oh, I wish it was about social skills. I miss the social skills. I'm like, how do you not see that letting go is social skills? That's the latest technology. But funny enough, and those of you who've been around this for, again, 10 years or so, you remember this, when it shifted from lines to principles, there was so much resistance in the whole socializing self-help community. People just wouldn't accept it. People would still say, no, it's the lines, no, it's the lines, no, it's the lines. There'd be videos about principles or articles, and all the comments were like, oh, but we want the lines. What's your line? Now it shifted to that, letting go. Oh, but what about the principles? Letting go. Oh, but what about building momentum? Letting go. And here's what we have to realize. Letting go is the latest technology that will take care of 80% of social skills. And you got to differentiate here too. When it comes to social skills, there's 80%, which is around, say, state management. And then there's 20% a bit more tactical, technical stuff. Same with, say, sales, so on and so forth, right? There is some tactical stuff like, okay, what's the situation, logistics, da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, you still need that. But all the advice, the other 80% around getting yourself into a good mood, feeling confidence, not getting stuck in your head, being grounded, not being the most reactive person, all of that, letting go. And we have to realize that the quality of your social skills has much more to do with what you remove than what you add on. Okay? And I'll give a couple illustrations here. So here is how one of it, you could say, this all evolved. A lot of people, this is where they see themselves in terms of their self-worth. I'm down here, I'm not good enough, I want to be up here. If you go out, you want to say hi to someone, they're up here, I'm down here, what do I do? They're out of my league, what do I do? How do I become cooler like them? Now, what's the most toxic form? The toxic approach? Oh, let me bring them down to my level. Let me neg them. Let me get them to doubt themselves and their self-esteem so they're now down at my level. And that is terrible, that is toxic. Thank God that's gone. Next step, okay, let's not bring them down. Let's bring ourselves up. Let's work on our confidence, build momentum, so on and so forth, trying to get there. And that's a much better approach. However, what's the problem? You never actually get there Because if you assume you're not good enough and every action you're taking is to become good enough, what do you keep telling yourself? By default, you're not good enough. I'm not confident. Let me work on being confident. If you are not confident and you're working on being confident, you will forever consider yourself as someone who isn't confident. For only someone who's not confident works on being confident. This is like the trap, right? We think we'll escape it, but it actually chases us. And that's what I noticed, right? Okay, I'm working on all this, but deep down inside, did things ever change? No. I just had a lot more material and tactics to cope and to try to boost myself up, but at a core, I still didn't feel whole. There wasn't that core confidence. And I'm sure you've heard this word before too, core confidence versus situational confidence, right? Situational confidence is where, let's just say at your work, at your job, let's just say you have a better position than someone else. In that instance, you're going to feel much more confident than the employee or the person who's below you, right? Like the manager versus the employee, the manager there is going to feel very comfortable. If you're out and say you have certain friends around you, right, really good close friends, like good vibes, you're going to feel more confident than if you were there by yourself. That's situational confidence. It's a certain situation that gives you that permission to be confident. But going even deeper, we always think externally. Okay, what about situational confidence externally? What about internally? Right? Okay, I'm not good enough unless I build momentum, unless I need the line, unless I feel this, so on and so forth. We have all these requirements, and it's still situational. It still depends on something. Core confidence can't depend on anything. For if it depends on something, what does it mean by default? You're not confident. Same with this idea of being enough. You can't become enough. The only way to be enough is to always have been enough, for it to be the foundation. Same with confidence. What's core confidence? It's confidence that depends on nothing. No requirements. Just 'cause. That's the type of confidence you want. So understanding this, you realize you can't build up to it, right? This approach forever keeps you trapped. And this is where letting go comes into play. If the only way to have core confidence is for it to just be there just 'cause, then it has to be the foundation. It has to come first. And perhaps I'm not down here. Perhaps there have been things in my life that I've experienced that I started believing that have conditioned me to believe I'm down here. And this is where letting go comes into play. Instead of trying to then work on yourself, you start letting go of everything that is convincing you that you're down here, and you realize you've been here this entire time. You let go of the things that are telling you you're not good enough, you're not confident. That's the approach. You remove that. And understanding this leads to the next step, where a lot of people, when they have a certain problem, what do? They ask themselves, what now? I'm confident, I'm not confident, what now? I'm anxious, what now? I'm stuck in my head, what now? I'm stifled, what now? Makes sense, right? What now? You have a problem, what now? How do I fix it? But, you know what's an even better question to ask yourself? Can you guess? Why? If you just, simple thing like this, by the way, if you just start incorporating it, your life will change. Instead of, I'm stifled, what now? Why am I stifled? I'm not confident, what now? Wait a minute. Why am I assuming I'm not confident? Where did that come from? I have social anxiety, what now? Wait, why do I have social anxiety? Change the why, change the approach. Why do I have this problem to begin with? And that's the shift here. I'm down here, what now? Wait, why do I assume I'm down here? And this also applies, even on a deeper level, in terms of who you believe you are here today. And this here, when it comes to the self-help community, is the foundation, and one of the reasons most people just fail completely. Because they assume who they are here today is them being authentic. Right? If you're someone who's, say, a little bit more shy, a little bit on the quieter side, you're like, well, that's me. What now? Oh, I heard I have to be, more outgoing. Maybe I should fake it. Maybe I should fake it till I make it. No, no, no. Why are you assuming that that's the authentic you? Were you born that way? That's a great question, by the way. Were you born always like, oh, just super kind of meek and shy, not putting yourself out there? Were you born that way? If you're someone who's, say, super negative all the time, were you born that way? Do you come out of your mom's vagina like, and just immediately complaining, like, ugh, it's a little too tight, squeezing out of this? Like, no. Right? No. So why do you assume that that's the authentic you? And then now what? And that's what traps us, is you could say you're born free, right? And then you're conditioned, and things happen that tense you up, you close off, and you put on this shell, right? You stifle yourself through conditioning, and this is now you here today. But if you do the, now what? This is me. Now what? How do I improve? It traps you in this forever. Because at a core, you're still assuming this little stifled you is the authentic you. Who you are here today isn't the authentic you. What if you're being fake right now? What if you've been fake for so long you convince yourself you're being real? That's the shift. Whoa. Instead of, I'm shy, now what? What if I've convinced them? Like, what if this is me being fake? And then it even changes the meaning when it comes to fake it till you make it. It's actually act real until you remember. And again, it's letting go of all this conditioning. That's the approach. The same with the competitive versus the collaborative paradigm. You can optimize a certain paradigm or you can drop it. You want to drop it. The more you optimize, the more it entrenches you in that paradigm. Okay? For example, I'm not good enough, now what? Right? Or it's me versus others. You can think of it as like, that's the reality. You can work on it. But the more you work on it, as we said, the more it keeps it alive, the more you're trapped there. And the solution you're after isn't in this paradigm. You have to drop it. Okay? So that there's the foundation. That's the biggest shift when it comes to these teachings. Now, building on it, when people hear letting go, they think it's a very passive approach, right? And when it came to a bit more of that inner work or even on the spiritual side, back in the day, I thought the same thing, right? If you came up to me back in, say, 2012, so on and so forth, like, hey, what about this? I'd be like, no, 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 just action. Because your ego's just hammered down like, this is the way, must go through, must plow through, so on and so forth. That's how I viewed it. And in a lot of cases, yeah, the spiritual inner side is a lot of just like people being like, oh, I'm just too scared to take action, so that's why I'm going to focus on this. But true letting go is a very active process. It's not just you sitting at home letting go, it's a mixture of the two. Okay? And this here brings up the next shift. So remember, not what now, why. The next one, and you can write this down, this is the formula that I teach my clients. Action, trigger, release, repeat. Action, trigger, release, repeat. Action, trigger, release, repeat. That's the formula when it comes to letting go. Okay? So let's break this down. This, we'll go back to it, but if you think about conditioning, which I talked about before, okay? This is how conditioning really happens. You're born, you might have heard me talk about this in some other videos. You're born whole. You're born free, right? Again, you come out, you're like, yay, what is this? You're this ball of just expansive energy. And you come into this thing called the world, life. You come into a society, and in this society, there are certain rules and guidelines. Is this good or bad? Good or bad? It's good. What would happen if there were no rules, no guidelines, no traditions? It'd be chaos. Okay, so for the most part, not all those rules are accurate and good, by the way, but for the most part, the fact that there are rules in a society is necessary. We wouldn't function otherwise. So that's factor number one. You come into a society. Number two, you're this, again, ball of expansive energy, but can you fend for yourself? No. So your survival depends on whoever is raising you. That's number two. Number three, do you see the world as it is? No. Right? You have a very limited perception, very limited perspective. Even as a kid, right? You don't really see the world as it is. As a baby even, by the way, first few months, you don't even know what this whole thing is. You can't even form a 3D interpretation of things. Now, because of that, here's what happens. You're born whole. You come into this world. Whoever's raising you, what's their job? To teach you the rules and guidelines. Right? So if someone here is like, let me get naked, your parents will be like, hey, no, 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 no. Whoever's raising you, hey, it's not okay to get naked. Right? Let me be loud, let me sing right now. No, 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 it's not appropriate right now. Right? You're in a seminar room, don't sing. So you're taught these rules. But here's what happens. Say this is you, again, whole and amazing, and say your parent tells you, hey, don't be so loud right now, or don't sing right now. Because you have such a limited perspective on things, as a kid, you might interpret that as them yelling at you and them not loving you. Right? As a kid, it's like, when they reward me, they love me. When they punish me and say no, they don't love me. Is that true? No, your parents love you either way. I mean, ideally, right? They're just, someone's like, maybe not. For the most part, they're just trying to help you. They're trying to show you the rules. But we don't see it that way as kids. Now, as a kid, because you depend on your parents, say they're like, hey, don't be so loud. They don't love me right now. Your survival is threatened. If they don't love me, what could happen? They could abandon me. If they abandon me, I die. So in order for me to survive, I have to please these ultimate beings. I can never have them not love me or I'm screwed. That's not true, but that's how you perceive it. So what do? The aspect of me that is loud is threatening my survival right now. Every time I'm loud, they tell me, no, 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 don't be so loud. So what happens if I keep being loud? They might just abandon me. So let me take this part of me and let's get rid of it. Anything that threatens your survival, you're going to get rid of it. Now, because it is you, can you actually get rid of it? No. But you can disown it and put it as far out of your awareness as possible. And that's what happens. We create this split within where you could say, here is the acceptable you, and here is the unacceptable you. This is where being loud goes. And this depends on your upbringing, on what was acceptable, what wasn't, right? In one household, for example, maybe they're like, don't be loud. In another one, they might be like, yay, every time you're loud, they celebrate. In one household, even on a deeper level, right, they might be like, you know what, being creative, right, that's being immature, that's not good. You want to be a very serious person, don't be a little child. What is this creative stuff? And you might take the part of you that is on the more creative side, disown it. Vice versa, in another household, they might be like, be creative. If you go all serious, that's sucking the soul out of your life. So we all go through this. And it's very important when it comes to true change to look back on your upbringing. Look at your household. Look at your community. Look at where you lived and ask yourself, overall, right, say in that country, what's acceptable, what isn't? In my community, what's acceptable, what isn't? In my household, what's acceptable, what isn't? And it'll give you a lot of data in terms of what you've disowned. This here is also one of the reasons none of us at a core feel like we're good enough. Think about it. You're born, and from the moment you come out, it's like, yay, bad kid, yay, bad kid. So we think we're only loved when we are the acceptable part of ourselves. And by default, from the moment we're born, we believe that there's something within us that isn't good, that we got to get rid of, that we're not good enough just to be us. Only when there's the acceptable you. And this here is the start of that front that we try to perfect and hide behind. Every single person here has it, right? So you get a feel for it. You go through these years, all this conditioning. Also happens in school, by the way. Okay, the three, you can say things or people that'll really hammer a lot of this in. Whoever's raising you, primary caretaker, teachers, classmates. Whoever has a lot of authority. Okay, so again, whoever's raising you, that's going to condition you a lot. Teacher, a lot of authority. Classmates, if they all believe it, also a lot of authority. And this is why a lot of people have traumatic experiences in the classroom when they're younger when it comes to, say, expressing themselves, right? They might be loud and people stare, or the classmate laughs, or the teacher tells you to be quiet, and perhaps showing interest in someone. As a kid, everyone teases everyone else. It's like, oh, you like that person? Ha ha ha, they like this person. And if they all start laughing, because you have a very limited perspective as a kid, you're like, I'm going to die, the classroom doesn't accept me, and there's no world outside the classroom. Ah! And then you disown that part of you. The part of me that expresses interest in someone, let's get rid of that because it's threatening my survival. And this is deeply ingrained in us. Then you go on to live your life. Here you are an adult. And you think you're over it. And logically you look back and you're like, yeah, that makes no sense. But it's deeply imprinted in you. And this here is what gets activated in a certain situation or gets triggered. This here, speaking of new technology, this is social anxiety or approach anxiety. That's you getting triggered. That is something that is poking at that aspect of you that, say, puts themselves out there or shows interest. And it's like, I will die if I embody this. It's not true, you know it, but there's still that same survival instinct that kicks in. And you can audit your life here and simply look at different situations where, say, you experience some anxiety or fear and ask yourself, is this appropriate to reality? If you go out and you want to say hi to someone, is it appropriate to freak out, to be like, okay, let's do this, let's do this? Is that normal? No. A lot of people also have massive fear when it comes to public speaking, right? If I bring someone up here, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm like, speak, own it, immediately stifled. That's not real. Because you know logically you're not at risk here, but something inside you gets activated. Okay? That's you getting triggered. It's when one of those aspects that you disowned is coming closer to the surface, or you're in a situation that's forcing you to embody it. And even though logically you think it's fine, it's still there pulling your strings. Okay? Now, this is why this formula is so key. Say you're someone who has approach anxiety. You get triggered socially. Step one, you're going to take action. You're going to say go out and put yourself out there socially. As you do, you're going to get triggered. The response. Okay? And this triggered response can be very intense. You know, I've seen it over the years. There's a client that comes to mind. This is in Amsterdam. We were at a McDonald's late at night, and we were just talking over, you know, the night out, and we went out and talking to people, and again, working on our social skills. And it was at the McDonald's. I'm like, hey, go say hi to that person over there. And the client, okay, sitting casually talking, went from, oh yeah, that's cool, it's cool, to what? I'm like, go on right now, go say hi. Suddenly started tensing up. No joke, started turning pale. I'm like, come on, and started giving him a bit of a shove, like, come on. Hanging on to the table for dear life, like as if I'm about to push him out of a plane. That was his response. That there has nothing to do with the external. That's something inside of him that got activated, that got triggered. Now, we think this is bad, but getting triggered is actually amazing. Why? Because one of those things you've been resisting is now coming closer and closer into your awareness, into you re-owning it and re-embodying that. And this here is where letting go or releasing comes into play. Action, trigger, and then you practice letting go of the resistance around being that and embodying that, and by doing so, you slowly become more and more whole. You divide and dissolve the split. Okay? Now, what does this also mean? It means going against traditional progressive desensitization. Okay? Where what people will do is they'll see this, okay, action, trigger, release, repeat, and they'll get the action side, and they'll even get the triggered side, but then they'll go out and say do different challenges or social anxiety challenges, but in order to desensitize themselves to getting triggered. But that's actually taking you in the opposite direction. This is progressive desensitization, right? Hey, if there's a situation that scares you, that triggers you, just keep putting yourself into it until you become numb to it, right? Does this work? To a certain extent, yes. Yeah, you will be more numb to it. If that's your intention, that's what you're doing, you'll be more numb to it. And I can guarantee you a lot of you are taking this approach. I took that approach for a long time, and you know you're taking that approach when it feels like this. You go out, say to socialize, you see someone you want to say hi to, you start feeling the triggeredness, right? And then, because you've done it so many times, you're just in this habit of like, okay, I'm going to go to my happy place now. And you kind of shift into this alternate kind of state, this disconnected, desensitized state, and then you still take action. You stuff down the triggerness and you kind of barrel through. And that is not good, because it's keeping the split alive, and you'll never get that true confidence you're after because it's relying on doing those challenges. And this is where you also have to start thinking long term, right? Okay, is your solution now to always have to do social anxiety challenges till the day you die? Right? Same with building momentum, which is absolutely insane that people still try to build momentum. That's the dumbest thing ever. Like what? Every time now you want to be social, you're going to have to build momentum first? I know people even too, it's like they have a date and they're like, before my date, I got to go say hi to some people to build momentum. What? That's insane. That is absolutely insane. It's a good first step, but you don't want to stay there. Having approach anxiety, social anxiety, building momentum, not good. Okay? And if you had it for a long time, it's because you're still using the old technology and you need to shift to this. There is such a thing. People are like, it's too good to be true. No, no, no. There's such a thing as not having to build momentum. There's such a thing as not having that triggered anxiety around putting yourself out there. If you follow the formula. Okay? An exercise I actually give my clients where you can also practice this on a more smaller level is with a cold shower. Same thing. When people go, who here does cold showers? Raise your hand. Go. Right? Tons of benefits to this, but the traditional approach that people take with a cold shower is, here they are, they turn on the water and it's cold. And what happens? It's immediately you versus the cold. And they're like, okay, let's do this. And they try to tense up and barrel through in the cold. Right? Anyone do that? Tends to be most people. Okay, that's our default reflex too. It's something like, it's intense sensations, like intense cold, and our default's like, okay, go to the happy place, desensitize. It's a very desensitized approach to it. What I tell my clients is to start practicing this, do the cold shower, but as you go in, see how relaxed you can be. Can you actually be completely relaxed and embrace all those sensations of cold? And resist that default reflex of tensing up, tensing up, tensing up. Can you get triggered by it and just stay with it? That's the same approach that you'll take when you do this. You go out, social anxiety, instead of, okay, barrel it down, let's fight through the cold and anxiety and take action and say hi to this person. Can I relax into it? And can I let go of this? That's the shift, okay? And you can also think of it like this. And if you're someone who's been doing desensitization for a long time, you're actually gonna have to backtrack a bit, okay? Because here's what happens. Let's just say here's you, super, say, shy, triggered, scared of putting yourself out there. What people do is they then desensitize themselves, and like I said, they go into like their happy place. Again, this is you with like muscles or whatnot, and you're like, the desensitized, yeah, battle against. And they're so used to going into that place, right, that that's now their default. It's like if you're doing cold shower and you've been doing it for so long, it's like by default, you resist. Now someone's telling you, hey, can you relax into it? You're going to have a lot of trouble because over so much time you can condition yourself to always just tense up. Same here. When I tell people, okay, now go out and go get triggered, some people have trouble even getting triggered because they're so disconnected from what that feels like because they've desensitized themselves too much. So what I tell them is, hey, if you really want to get rid of this for good, you're going to have to reconnect with what it feels like. You're going to have to reconnect with the old you, the chode you that's super triggered, and then instead of desensitizing, it's resensitizing yourself and letting go. Make sense so far, by the way? I know we're covering a lot, but yeah? All right. So there's still a ton of action involved. Okay? Another key quote, it's never the thing, it's the place it's coming from. Letting go in terms of social skills, you're still taking massive action. You're still putting yourself out there. You're still getting triggered left and right, so on and so forth. But the approach isn't this, okay, move away from optimize. It's I'm doing all this to trigger what is stifling me and blocking me to begin with, and dissolving that inner split. And by doing so, right, say you dissolve it to here, it's a little bit less, you feel more at home and at ease in your own skin. You feel a lot more confident, and it shifts you in that collaborative state too, because now it's no longer you trying to hide this and trying to optimize the front. Just think about it, right? Say you were to go out and you could just be you. There's nothing to hide. You don't have to be cool or like, oh, don't see these parts of me. Just be you and just relax into it. You wouldn't be all stifled. You wouldn't have to build momentum, and it would actually be enjoyable. This here is achieving core confidence. It's dissolving this. Okay? And it doesn't mean now that you have to be loud all the time, but your relationship around that part of you, it's no longer, I'm not good enough because of the loudness. It's just a part of me that I can choose to embody or not, but my self-worth isn't attached to it. okay? And just think about the traditional approach here too. People have this split, and what they do is they try to go out and they try to amplify the front, right? So they optimize the front, they try to be cool. Then to optimize it even more, they try to get positive feedback, approval, validation, while at the same time trying to hide this and always experiencing the fear of someone seeing through. A lot of people, they have something to hide. They're hiding something. That's why they're so tense. That's why they're so stifled. Right? Key question to even reflect on, what are you hiding? Say you go out tonight and say you see someone, you're like, oh, too scared to say hi to this person. Like, why? What are you hiding? What are you afraid they'll see? You can even make the list. There's probably some conscious reasons that come up, right? They're going to see that maybe I'm a little bit too shy, that I'm not used to being around a person like this, that I'm low value, Like, that's the why. Why do you have this? What are you hiding? Why do you, and then the other one is, why do you assume they're up there? Okay? So this is the foundation when it comes to confidence. Same with social skills. Approach anxiety, so on and so forth. It's you getting triggered, and you got to let go of it, not power through. Big shift.
So a lot of times, like when you're anxious in social situations, right? I'm sure you know about like evolutionary psychology.
Yeah.
Like there are real consequences to being low status.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost like, do you feel like you can kind of get to a place where you're trying to avoid what's like a biological drive, which is like falling low in the social hierarchy, right? And so it's like, I get that. Sorry about that.
So there will still be some of that. So I love your question. So notice I even got it before. So the general question was, okay, but what about things like evolutionary, again, fear, pressure, you raise your status back in the day, right? You're actually, you know, at risk. Your life is at risk. So that there, yeah, it might still be there a bit. And this is important to understand, actually. Love this question. If you think of you getting triggered, think of this as the full extent of the reaction, right? This is, for example, right, fear when it comes to socializing. You get this crazy, like triggered response. When you let go, you're going to let go of all the unrealistic response. So you might let go of all of this, but there might still be some real emotion there that just stays. But I can guarantee you, it might just be like a little bit of, this is a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah. But it's not going to run you to that extent. So when you let go of anything unrealistic. Real emotions are there to serve you. But very few of us actually experience real emotions. Same with anger. People get super triggered over the top. When you let go, you're letting go of all the triggeredness, so you're just left with the real emotion. You can always easily deal with the real emotion. So yeah, there might be some situations where you're like, maybe this is a little bit, risky, and the biological thing kicks in, but it's so small, it's like 0.1%, that you almost don't even feel it. It's not this crazy response. Yes? Louder. Releasing the tension around it?
Well, mainly the relaxing in. When you said something about relaxing,
yeah.
Into that feeling, like,
yes.
Like anxiety or nerves.
Yeah. So I mean this, it's like, if you think of getting triggered, right? Another model, you could say this is your conscious mind, this is your subconscious, and down here is everything you've disowned. When you get triggered, it's one of those things you've disowned or an aspect or something that's coming up into your awareness and to you embodying it. And what we do is we try to embody it while it's simultaneously stuffing it down. So when I say relax into it, it's when you're actually triggered, it's good, because if there's, say, layers and layers of resistance to sometimes even becoming aware of this, it's a lot easier to catch it here. So relax into it is mean allow yourself to feel it. And you're releasing the charge. Stay with that charge and release it versus stuffing it back down. Okay? And then in terms of how this even affects you on a social level, right? You've probably heard me talk about control muscles and release muscles. Even in terms of self-expression, so much of it is simply getting out of your own way and releasing. Again, the label we put to it is, oh, releasing is just doing nothing. It's like, no, releasing is what allows you to be loud like this. That there, this me, like even mic off, right? This here is not me controlling. It's actually me letting go and releasing. I could not be this loud if I was controlling it. Do I need momentum to tap into this? No. Get it? The difference though, and this is if you follow, for example, say, David Hawkins, he has a book, Power versus Force. It's the difference between power and force. Control, what people do is, remember, who they think they are is fake. So they're stifled to begin with. They are stifling themselves. And while stifling themselves, they then try to fight against that and be loud. They have one foot on the gas, one foot on the brakes. That doesn't work. And you'll sense it. It'll come out a bit more, it's tough to do because this will be the more force. It's like, okay, everyone, welcome. So we're going to do that. Or just watching my old videos. That's force. Hey, everyone. It's just very right? Hey, do you hear me? Am I loud? Versus the other type of loud is not even projecting at you. Hey, can you hear me? Am I loud? It's actually even just going down. It is drawing you in. It's not even directed at you. Do you see the subtlety there? That's the difference. People sense this, these little subtleties just in the vibe. Hey, what's up? Okay, everyone, so what we're going to talk about? Okay, everyone, here's what we're going to talk about. Release, control. If you just take the foot off the brake, it'll flow out. And you know this just in terms of situations where, say you're out socially, you might be very stifled and you're trying to be loud, yet in other situations, maybe with close friends, you're just loud by default. So it just flows out. Right? The same as giving you access to certain faculties, to certain jokes, to certain range of expressiveness. So much of that is just, hey, get out of your own way. That's our problem. We go out, we stifle ourselves with conditioning, and then we fight against it. We self-impose it. And then we look for techniques which reinforce it and validate that our self-imposed stifleness is real, and it stays there. Now, is there then such a thing as, you could say, I mean, here's a whole other one, right? This idea of willpower, same thing. Willpower is something that we do all have, and it is something that is good and that must be used. But you can write down the distinction, use it for moving forward, not backwards. What does that mean? Right now, am I using willpower? Yes, I am. I'm using willpower to craft out this content, to link the points, to make the points, to show examples, to answer questions, to make sure it clicks. It's forward focused. It's crafting my words, my delivery. Yes, I'm using willpower. How do most people use their willpower? Going backwards. For example, they stifle themselves and then they use their willpower trying to unstifle themselves. They self-sabotage, they use the willpower to fight it. They're out of state, they use the willpower to get in state. They're not loud, they use the willpower to get loud. No, drop all that. So you have your full focus moving forward on this solid foundation of releasing, not controlling. Otherwise, you're just burning too much in the back. Right? You can think of it as there's all the energy if you're driving. It's like gas, brake, all the energy of like, okay, more gas, more willpower. That's not smart. If you just release the brake, now you can use all that extra willpower towards actually crushing it. Same here.
I've been releasing for a while, but I still feel that there's like a big split for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Do I just keep releasing all the time so that that eventually becomes my normal MO, or like how do I get to like more freedom, I guess?
If you're not noticing it, you're releasing the wrong way. So that goes into the technicalities around releasing. Yeah. Like classic example of releasing the wrong way, people try to let go in terms of getting rid of. Oh, there's this thing, I'm going to like breathe it out, get rid of it. Yeah. But by doing so, you're still labeling it as bad and resisting it so it persists. What you're actually letting go of is the resistance around it, right? A good way, just as the cold shower or whenever you're triggered, is ask yourself, is my intention to move away from this or to move towards it, right? Moving away, if you're doing the releases like that, is the same as desensitization. You're triggered and you're trying to get rid, move away. Like, oh, cold, move away. As opposed to, like what I do, say with the breaths, I just breathe in and I literally visualize myself sinking into it and I let it take over. I'm moving towards it, not away from it. It's re-owning, letting go of resistance around it, embodying versus getting rid of. That's one of many, but that's a big trap people fall into. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Letting go, you could even argue letting go is a terrible word. It's technically accepting and embracing. It's letting go of resistance, aka embracing and accepting. Yes. Yeah.
How do you know if you're heading there
more natural, or if I'm creating an ego around something different.
Love this. Look for a feeling of relief and at easeness, right? So, for example, when someone lets go, and we'll get to this, at the end of, say, a release, they might actually feel perhaps sad or even angry or whatever may come up. But even in that sadness, there's a sense of relief where they are just being a bit more of who they are. If you think of that split, again, so much of our energy is trying to disown that unacceptable side. When you release, it's like, oh, a little bit less. I don't have to hide as much. So that's what you look for. And then you can also audit it, right? Like, look for relief, look for situations that used to trigger you that no longer trigger you. And overall, in terms of how you feel, it's, do I feel open and at ease and safe and people on my side, nothing to hide, all is good? Or is it just very heavy, tense, trying to maintain? Is there a lot of effort, right? You can write ego equals effort, right? Heaviness, tenseness, me versus. That would be the shift in the vibe. And people sense it also socially, right? It's like socially, like, I need this to work. Oh, don't, like, I'm laughing, but don't see this part of me, versus all is good. So that's, in terms of the feeling, you'll sense that shift there.
So it's a bodily sensation instead of it being a mental.
Yes.
Mind frame.
Yes. Yes, you're letting go of the charge on a felt sensation level, but by doing so, all of the associated thoughts will start fading away. And we'll get to this too, right? If you think of that little voice in your head, it has a certain theme. Everyone has a different theme, right? It might be a very victim theme. It might be a very scared theme. It might be a very self-attack, anger theme. And then people are like, I must quiet the voice, I must quiet the voice, right? But then by doing so, you're now resisting. It's just terrible. The way to quiet that voice, which ultimately isn't what you really want to do. What do you really want to do? You want to change the theme of that voice. If you had a voice that just kept telling you how awesome you are, I love you, you're awesome, would you want to quiet that voice? Right? So it'll be less intense and more loving, and that's what happens when you start letting go more as well. And all those things like, they're staring, they're judging me, oh, this, gone. It just doesn't pop up. And you don't have to make yourself stuff it down, it just stops popping up. The other thing to really notice, this is another key model, is if you think of, this is more on the success level, there is that split that holds us back, but there are also different core beliefs that hold us back. And as we discussed, that core identity, who you still keep alive here today, who you think you are. Those are the three things you want to let go of. So if you audit your life, here's the model. Here is you. And this is every single person, by the way. We all have an invisible prison around us, this invisible force field. Everyone has it. And what happens is the goals we're after might be out here. Well, I want to accomplish this. I want to do this. I want to put myself out there. I want this, this, this. And we go for these attempts to chase our goals. And things go well as long as you're acting within this invisible prison, this invisible force field. But as soon as you pierce out, self-sabotage kicks in. For example, let's just say socializing. You talk to someone you believe is in the same league as you, or you're even outside their league. Do you get stifled? No. Do you get nervous? No. Right? So you're talking to someone, you're like, oh, I'm outside their league. Oh, we're in the same league. No, you won't feel nervous at all. Talk to someone who's outside your league, that's where you tense up. You can actually notice, this is called a ceiling of success in terms of socializing, around who, at what point do you start getting stifled? Right? Oh, with this person not so stifled, with this person, oh, with this person I'm stifled. That's your ceiling. Same with health. There's a certain point where it's like, oh, okay, I'm being healthy, and then you start getting maybe a little too healthy and self-sabotage kicks in. So if you think of this invisible prison along the border here, this is where you could say, put the guards of self-sabotage, patrolling. And as soon as you try to escape, they get you. Now, as soon as you try to escape as well and you pass this limit, this is where your drive shifts to willpower only. And this is traditional self-help. This is the hustler trying to hustle out and discipline out and work ethic and willpower out. And ultimately, what are they trying to do? They're fighting against the guards of self-sabotage. That's most advice out there. It's not actually success advice, it's anti-self-sabotage advice. And you're going to have all the tips and tricks to fight against these guards. Oh, I jump out, I start getting stifled. What are some techniques? Oh, do this to get out of your head. Do this to battle the guard of stifledness. Right? Now here's the thing though. You can't win. And you will never, ever win if you fight them directly. You can delay the inevitable. Right? So say you pierce out. You can delay how long it takes for them to drag you right back in. You can get very good at delaying it. Personally, a lot of my earlier years in my personal journey, I was I was a master at delaying it. I was a master at fighting those guards of self-sabotage. But eventually, they'd pull me back. You can't win. Okay? And you can also sense it too. As soon as you pass this limit, it's like there's this invisible hand that grabs you and like, nope, not for you. So what's the solution? How do you get out of this prison? Right? We think we have free will, but in reality, you only have free will within the prison. Even if you audit your life, by the way, we're all living in this little invisible circle. Nothing really truly changes. This is why New Year's resolutions don't work as well. What's the solution? Why is there this prison to begin with? Notice the approach. Okay, there's the guards. What now? How do I fight the guards? Wait a minute. Why is there a prison? Why are there guards? Can I perhaps deactivate this force field? To deactivate it, you got to ask yourself, what's keeping it alive? Why is it there? And it's three things. One, past trauma. Right? And trauma, again, is simply when there's something that's just so overwhelming that threatens your well-being that forces you to either suppress or repress. Right? When you take a part of you and disown it, that's you going through something traumatic. And trauma depends on the perspective of the individual. So as a kid, being yelled at by your parents can be traumatic. As a kid, getting lost in the grocery store for 10 seconds can be traumatic. It's not just crazy situations like going to war and abuse. Yes, that's traumatic. But the thing is, we fail to address that a kid has a very limited perspective. So a lot can be traumatic where when we see it now, we're like, it's not traumatic. Trauma, part of the human condition. Every single person has it. Or you wouldn't have that split. So trauma is one. But then there's core beliefs and your core identity. These three things, you could say, are the batteries that are keeping this generator alive. And what we do is we just keep living our lives trying to fight the guards instead of, hey, let's find the switches, turn them off, and this fades away. Okay? So trauma we covered. That's also especially when you get really triggered. But it's important to also bring your awareness to core beliefs and your core identity. Okay? Core beliefs, you can think of it as there's the early beliefs that you form or assumptions that you form coming into this world. Right? So how do you make sense of all of this? You form an assumption, and then you tell yourself, if this is true, then how do I make sense of that? Okay, well then that's true. And if this is true and that is true, then that is true, so on and so forth. And we have, you could say, belief trees, where, for example, you might be looking at whoever's raising you in terms of their relationship, maybe your parents, and maybe it's very dramatic, right? Maybe your parents fight a lot. That's just the household you grew up in. You don't know any better as a kid, so you're going to look at that and be like, huh, that's a relationship. That's going to be your model of what a relationship or love is. And you don't know any better, so you're going to be like, okay, well, love is a lot of fighting, a lot of drama, right? Check. And then from that, right, here's the assumption, love equals fighting. Then you're going to make more beliefs, and if that's true, then this is true, and it's all on this foundation of love equals fighting. Now, these core beliefs, more often than not, we're not aware of them, right? We put them as far out of our awareness as possible because we don't ever want to question them. And not only that, but we don't want to let go of them because here's the fear. If this is wrong, what happens to the belief tree? It crumbles. Then all that is wrong. And we hang on to this map, no matter what. So a lot of self-sabotage has to do with these core beliefs that are out of your awareness. If you actually think about self-sabotage, it's really not you screwing yourself over. It's you giving yourself exactly what you want. However, you're not aware of the part of you that wanted it. So here's the example. Say there's that belief, love equals fighting, love equals fighting, love equals fighting. You get into a relationship. Say there's no fighting, you're going to bounce. And you will keep finding toxic relationships where you keep fighting, partners who create a lot of drama to stay congruent to that core belief. That's so much of self-sabotage. It's you trying to stay congruent to your map of understanding and your map of the world. Consciously, I don't want that. But it's much scarier to get that and challenge a core belief than to self-sabotage and stay congruent to it. So whenever you self-sabotage, and this is a great way to identify core beliefs, ask yourself, what's the hidden payoff? Why do I secretly want this? Everything in your life right now, you love it. You might be like, no. If you want to work on your health and you're like, I don't really like the way I am physically, BS, you love it. Oh, I want to succeed a bit more socially. No, you don't, or you would have. Everything about your life right now, the whole situation, everything, there is a part of you that loves it, but you might not be aware of that part. You're getting something out of it. That's self-sabotage. You're giving yourself what you want, but you're not consciously aware of it. So, it's key to identify it. What's the hidden payoff? How could I possibly secretly like this payoff? Right? It could also be, for example, that even around yourself, maybe there is some guilt over something you did or didn't do in the past. And for some reason you keep self-sabotaging and you're like, why? But there might be a part of you that's saying, hey, you're giving yourself the justice you know you deserve. Or if there's a belief that's formed around success. This is where you really want to bring your awareness when it comes to core beliefs. Okay, what do I think about success? What's my definition of success? For a lot of people, success is scary. It's a lot of responsibility, right? And if you think, okay, success is a lot of responsibility, and then you're like, well, I'm not the most responsible person, you won't allow yourself to succeed. Because then you can't deal with the responsibility. So core beliefs, key. But then even deeper, your core identity. Who you believe you are. And a great exercise is to see if you can pick a fictional character, movie character, TV character, book character, you name it, that describes you the most. You can actually even do it now, right? If you had to pick a movie character, you're like, that is me. That character describes, maybe not everything that's you, but describes me the most. Here's some common ones. Rocky. Anyone like the movie Rocky? Right? The underdog. That there describes a lot of people. Now, if you take this core identity, and it's the ones that really speak to you, right, at a core. You're like, oh yeah. How might that run your life, right? I have many clients where they're like, Rocky, Rocky. The thing with Rocky, if you're the underdog, as an example, that's your identity, you always need a big obstacle to overcome and people to doubt you and someone to prove wrong. Now, how does that manifest in your life? Instead of letting success come to you easily, you're always creating this chaos and drama and these obstacles and putting yourself in these tough situations to always have to overcome them and prove people wrong. It runs you, right? Another person might be, well, I'm Goodwill Hunting. That's a common one. Or Spider-Man's a common one, right? Waiting for that magical moment where the spider bites you, and here you are just waiting for something to magically happen. We all have this, a core identity. One that I had for the longest time was the self-destructive artist, where I wouldn't allow myself to fully succeed, I had to destroy. If I succeeded, I was no longer self-destructive. So everything out here, right, if there's patterns, identify the patterns, will link to something you disowned, trauma, or you staying congruent to a core belief, or you staying congruent to that core identity. You don't want to challenge it. Make sense? Okay, and with that character, you can ask yourself, what are the pros and cons? Sometimes there's pros. Sometimes you might be like, well, I'm the hero, and you know, I'm the hero who succeeds massively, but I'm forever alone. And you might be someone who's actually really successful, but in terms of relationships, friendships, no. Because you're staying congruent to kind of this martyr hero who sacrifices the personal life for the glory, right? For the business, for the money, for whatnot. Someone might also be the victim. Someone might be the number two, the sidekick, where you're always helping others, but you can never be the main person. Right? We all have this. So, some key audits. What character are you? And then, what's my ceiling of success? Key when it comes to health, wealth, and relationships. At what point do I start feeling that invisible force that pulls me back? Okay. And if you want another model, it'll also manifest like this, okay? So you see the invisible prison, but then if you zoom in on, say, the ceiling of successes, this is how most people's lives look like. There's the ceiling and the floor, and what they do is they oscillate, right? Everyone had this. Say it's health. Okay, one day you wake up and you're like, what happened? I got to work on my health, right? And then you start going hardcore, and you start making progress, right? You start cutting out bad food, you're exercising, you're doing great. Things get better and better and better until you hit the ceiling, start passing the ceiling. And maybe it challenges, like for me, I experienced this a long time, it challenges that core identity of being self-destructive. Hey, I can't be too healthy or I'm no longer self-destructive. Suddenly this success is going against that core identity or a core belief. And this here is when self-sabotage kicks in. And it might be subtle. You might be like, oh, you know what, I can take a day off. Right? I've been going pretty hardcore. Let's take a day off. Let's go out with some friends. Let's get a nice meal. Then you have the nice meal. You might overeat. Then you wake up the next day, you're like, oh, I ate too much. You know what, I'll take another day off to recoup. And the spiral starts. And you fall off until you hit this floor, and that's where you wake up. You're like, oh my God, what happened? And then it repeats, up, down, and it gives you the illusion of progress, because there are times where you're moving up, but you're not actually moving up. You're fixing the mess you created. Right? Same with money. Okay, I'm going to do serious. Okay, focus on my finances, work. Oh, I made a good amount of money. You know what? Let me spend it a little bit here. Fall off. And we live this yo-yo. Right? Even in the self-help world, people are like, okay, let's start working on myself. And then you slack off. And then you come back to the self-help, and then you slack off. So the key here, though, is what's keeping this ceiling alive? Identify it, let go of it, and keep moving up.
When I go out, I find that the main thing that keeps me from approaching the people that I really want to talk to is not necessarily the fear of rejection, but more of the fear of embarrassment. Like, oh, okay, it's fine getting rejected, but it's like, what if they reject me in front of other people? And, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's something fear, but I do.
Yeah. So it'll be, one, finding why and where that came from, and ultimately the whole theme will be detaching your self-worth from approval. All right? So right now what you're doing is you're taking a part of yourself and you're placing it on others, and you say, if you approve of me, my self-worth moves up. If you disapprove, my self-worth goes down. And now you're there and they're pimping you out. Right? I mean, everyone does this. I mean, you could even go deep. You want to hear one? Right? Everyone here is, okay, you sell out when it comes to approval, when it comes to money, so on and so forth. People sell out. That's you selling out, right? But here's another one. Right now, little thought experiment. Let's just say, if, say, both of your parents are currently alive, let's just say they died right now. And say you're past the grieving phase, and again, super dark, but imagine a situation where you've actually processed it, you've moved on, they've just peacefully vanished out of existence. Would the way you live your life change? And if the answer is yes, you're like, oh, I would actually do this and take more risks. You're selling out for their approval too, and you're being pimped out. Same thing, right? But that's key, right? And this is what people experience too. They get approved of, they're like, yay, disapproved of, no, yay, and they're literally, their self-worth's moving up and down. Detach it from that. You're whole regardless. Because what you're literally saying is, and this is also the level of desire which links to approval, is you take, you might have seen me draw this before, what we do is we take a part of ourselves, right? We take this, and we put it here, and we put it behind a wall. I'm not whole, I need this part of me, and it lies behind approval. And then we chase it. As soon as they approve, then I'll be whole. As soon as I get this, then I'll be whole. As opposed to, no. Start by being whole, and you can still go after that same goal, but you're whole before and you're whole after. Right? You can also audit different requirements. If you sense things like that boost your confidence or self-worth, write them down. Okay, approval's one. What else? What are all these conditions and requirements I'm imposing? So that's definitely one to let go of. Super common, right? If you see the diagram here, that's the level of desire. This here, you might have seen me talk about in some videos. This is the next step. So we get the foundation of confidence, the evolution of social skills and advice, differentiating between real and triggerness, right? Then the next step is this map here. And the way I personally view this is the nice sweep that we all do. So it's a sweep that you can do, an audit, you could say different things that you might have disowned, right? If you go through this and actually let go of all the different levels, it'll clear up, you could say, a lot of that split. But it also illustrates the process of transformation. We're at the very bottom, for example, and there's many different maps out there. There's, again, David Hawkins, Frederick Dodson, Spiral Dynamics, you name it. This is the one that's not overly complicated. A lot of those maps are just way too complicated, mental masturbation. And the one that I've really seen in terms of my experiences coaching. At the bottom, apathy. Okay, that's the level of just, what's the point? Right? What's the point? I can't anyway. Screw it. Right? Loss of hope. As you move up, you hit grief, victimhood. And as you move up with each level, by the way, you get access to more power and more energy. So say you tell someone who's like, oh, what's the point? I'm in apathy. And you're like, hey, it's actually not your fault. You're a victim. Is that good advice for someone at that level? Yes. Oh, it's actually not my fault. You mean I could, but it's because of this. I thought I couldn't at all, so what's the point? Actually, I can, but I'm a victim. That's why I'm not. It's actually empowering. Then there's fear. And as you'll notice, with each level, there's different advice. And this is a key thing, by the way, if you remember this map, any piece of self-help content that you see, fit it in the appropriate level. Meaning, people mess up because they apply advice that's for another level, depending on where they're at. Right? Like, if you're in apathy, being a victim is good. Do you want to stay there? Of course not. But for someone at that level, it's good. For someone who's then in victimhood, what's great advice? Take responsibility, step it up. Don't be a little. All right? That's good advice for someone who's in grief. Is it where you want to stay? No. But you move up. Right? So take responsibility, you hit fear. You could also start getting angry and move up. Instead of, oh, I'm such a victim, it's like, enough! What am I going to do about it? Right? So with each level, the advice changes and you move up. The four bottom ones here, from apathy, grief, fear, and anger, those are really the competitive states, where it's you versus. Now here's the key to catch these themes. Apathy is me versus others, me versus the world. What's the point? And you just kind of withdraw and give up. Grief is me versus others, me versus the world, and you start feeling sorry for yourself, like, oh, why is it so hard? Poor me. Fear is you versus others, you versus the world, must protect, right? They're out to get me, must protect. Anger is you versus others, you versus the world, let's show them, let's do something about it. But it's still in the competitive frame. And with each level too, like I would tell someone in grief, do something about it, chew up for anger. However, in anger, that's where it's like, okay, time to forgive. Time to let go. But I wouldn't tell someone who's in grief. Different advice, different levels. Now then there's a shift. From anger, you then shift to courage. And what I do, this is actually the curriculum I take clients through, is the first four levels, there's a lot of action, you're triggering different things, right? There's different advice and there's different releases for the levels. And as you start clearing up a lot of those more competitive states, what happens is you then start shifting into a collaborative state, right? Anger, by the way, that's a lot of self-help. Why? Because most people in society reside in grief, fear, and anger. If you want to speak to someone who's in fear or someone who's in grief, what's the thing that resonates with the most? Step it up! Hustle! Discipline! And that's so much of self-help, right? The hustler, the discipliner, the no days off. And what do they rely on for motivation? Self-attack. They attack themselves, criticize themselves to take action. That's self-help, right? Like David Goggins, king of anger and self-attack. Amazing. Amazing though, but that's the level. And it's amazing advice for someone who is in grief or fear, but you don't want to reside there. So courage is when you shift to, instead of playing against something and playing not to lose, what about playing to win? And that's the other big shift. Remember, fighting against self-sabotage, fighting against being stifled. You're in a competitive state. How do I fight against this? I'm trying to hide this identity. How do I fight against it? It's all playing not to lose. It's all in reaction. What about playing to win? And this here is when people start asking themselves, okay, what is it that I actually want? What's my win? And very few people can actually answer this. Everyone knows what they don't want, but very few know what they actually want. And when I ask them, okay, what's your ideal life? They're like, well, there wouldn't be this. I'm like, what would it look like? What would there be instead? I don't really know. Like, they have no idea. So that's when you venture into, okay, let me start seeing what my real win is. But the level of courage, you tend to play a little small, and there still tends to be some procrastination, some dabbling. Then above that, there's desire. And I put desire here for two reasons. One, you can actually temporarily use desire to your advantage to stick to something for a longer period of time. Remember, courage, you're kind of dabbling around, right? You can think of the lower levels as you're avoiding the stick. Desire is the carrot. Okay, what about the carrots? Go a little bit longer. So you can actually use it to your advantage temporarily. But what also happens, this is the second reason I place it here, is people will tend to get a glimpse of their authentic win and courage, and then they sell out for approval, money, success, and desire takes over. So then you want to let go of desire, and that's when you really tap into purpose, right? Dialing in on the win, being much more detailed, and that fuel, purpose, is the motivational fuel, including love. It's the one you want to tap into. So you can think of it like this, right? At the very bottom, fear is a great motivational fuel. It'll make you take action, right? Being scared. This is why people even say, and I've said it too, and I think it's great for some of that level, think of the worst case scenario, no going back. But then as you move up, it's like, what's a better motivational fuel? Anger. Much more powerful. That's the hustler again. But there's an even better one. So the way you can also think of these motivational fuels is, say you're someone who's like super tired, you haven't slept at all, and someone's like, here's a monster Red Bull drink with extra sugar and chemicals. Enjoy. Will that give you energy? Yes. But what happens is people think that's the ultimate solution and they stay there. What's a better source of energy? Perhaps moving up to coffee. Right? You could say coffee would be anger. Great. Is there one above that? Desire could be one. You could say desire is tea. What about one above that? Someone said, yeah. What about just sleep and just naturally being motivated? That's purpose and love. So there's different fuels. And it doesn't mean like you never then tap into like a little pocket of anger, like use all of them. But overall, you don't want your, you could say, human car and engine, the majority of it to run on those toxic ones. You want the foundation to be purpose and love, not the others. Okay? So that's purpose. It's like, what's my win? What do I feel inspired to do? And when you tap into that, right, including love, and even linking it to you, it's like you are way sharper and way more motivated. No one can succeed long term if they rely on anger or desire. Just like fighting the guards of self-sabotage, you can delay it, but eventually you'll give up. Same with the swings, right? Remember, up and down? If you're like, discipline, 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 eventually you're like, oh, you just can't maintain that. The reason, for example, I'm able to do like even a speech like this, right? Just blah, 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 like I could keep going with work, so on and so forth, is this here feels effortless. And it feels fun, it feels amazing, and I'm not fighting against anything. A lot of people can think of, say you play a video game, right? People can't work for more than like an hour, they're all tired, but they can play video games 16 hours, 24 hours straight. Because their relationship to it is very different. There's not the same heaviness. Shift your work to that. And working will be like playing a video game, where you can just play and play and play and play and play and play and play. Right? And not only do you succeed a lot more, but you actually enjoy it. And that's the other thing, right? With the other levels, like if you're getting results and again, you're self-attacking so much, you can never enjoy it, you're actually scared of enjoying it because you think if you enjoy it, you'll stop taking action because you need the self-hate to take action. That's terrible. And the same with desire, more, 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 more. If you're not enjoying the results, those are not results. Think about it. Even though, oh, but externally it looks really good. Yeah, but if you're not enjoying it, you're failing. That's not good. Okay, and even in terms of our win here, what desire will do, and this is why it's also so hard to really identify what it is that you want, is most people's win isn't what they actually want, but what would impress others. Most people will go for a goal that others would approve of. Most people will go for even relationships that others would approve of. Most people go for careers and stuff that others would approve of, not what they actually want. What is it that you want? It's identifying that and staying true to it, whatever that is. Even in terms of patterns that run people, a lot of it is childhood and even high school, right? A lot of people even get into the social skills, and that was me, where people weren't that cool in high school, and then you're trying to be the cool person after. You're trying to replay these patterns you missed out on. You're like, I need the girl in high school, the popular girl. I need to be the popular guy now. And like in your adult life, you're still acting like a little high school kid. Crazy. Okay? But with this here, this is the map that I personally use. So what happens is, you know, going deeper on the force fields, trauma, core beliefs, core identity, one thing I'm always looking for is themes. If something doesn't go my way, what's the theme? What's the theme? What's the level? And everyone here has a default state, meaning there's one level here where you reside most of the time. And you got to identify it. If you don't know your default level, you are screwed because you won't know what advice to apply to yourself. But we also all have pockets, meaning someone could be, let's just say, when it comes to their job, on a level of purpose. And they actually love their job. When it comes to work, they're crushing it. Yet, when it comes to their relationships, they might be in grief and feel like a victim or in fear. Okay? So whenever something's happening in my life, I'm like, oh, what happened? Oh, what do I feel? It's not going my way. I'm always like, what's the theme? What's the theme? What's the theme? And then based upon the theme, there's different advice, different tools, right? I think this is my tool belt. Like, okay, let me pull out the tools for that level. And there's a release that focuses on that specific level that I'll listen to. But this here, game changer, life changer. Like this is the map that I keep coming back to. This is the inner audit that I do myself, and even the meditations that I've created, you know, for myself and clients for each level. I listen to those myself. Game changer. And the cool thing too is with each of these levels, you can also there's different advice, but also different missions and action steps that you can do that will help trigger things to move up. Just as we talked about, action, trigger, release, repeat, linked to each level. All right? Now, the other cool thing, so this here is also how you're going to see the evolution of the self-talk change in your mind, right? That little voice in your head. Another great way to help identify some of the states that run you. Ask yourself, what's the theme? Right? Is that little voice in your mind saying, oh, you're such a victim, it's so hard, maybe you can't do it, oh, don't you just want to go lie down and just eat some ice cream and cry? Grief, right? Or when things happen, what's your default? Oh, like, you know, some people, like if they receive something harsh, like, hey, what are you doing? Step it up. Someone would be like, yeah. Some other be like, oh, I just want to go cry and feel sorry for myself now. Is it fear, right? What are the threats? What are the threats? What's going on? What are the threats? Is it anger, self-attack? What's the theme of the voice? And as you start letting go, that's how the theme starts changing, and again, ideally moving up to love. Now here's the other key thing, especially socially. Until you hit that state of love, your social skills will suffer because you will not see the world as it is. Huge. Meaning, the state you're in doesn't just hijack that voice and your thoughts, but it hijacks what you see and what your selected focus, your RAS, focuses on and zones in on. Meaning, just as how we talked about earlier today, say you go to a venue and at first you're like, oh, so scary, oh, threats, 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 and then so you take some action and you might get yourself in state and you're like, oh, it's actually chill. It's the exact same environment, but you're focusing on different things. You could think of it as glasses, right? You have the fear glasses on, and then temporarily you take them off and you put, say, a love glasses on. But you want to have that as the default. So you can look at how you perceive the world, how you perceive situations, and the key is to shift the glasses. And with social skills, here's the thing. If you don't see things as they are, you will not be calibrating to reality. So if you have fear glasses on, when you see someone, you're looking for threats. Oh, scary person, threats, how do I calibrate to that? And by calibrating to that, not only are you off, but you will impose that frame on the person, and more often than not, they will play into it. And this is why even back in the day, you hear things like, assume attraction. And people try to force themselves to do it even though they don't feel it. It's very different if you're like, they love me, hey, how's it going? Versus, they don't love me, they're scary. Very different. This is how you permanently do it. And that's the problem. People are calibrating to what they think they see in the other person when that's actually not who that person is. Okay? And again, this here in terms of like success, advice, you name it, game changer, game changer, game changer. Now, a couple other things. You want this, you want to understand this, and you want, again, to let go at every single level while coupling it with accountability and support. I think accountability and support are necessary training wheels. Not something you want long term, but necessary training wheels to make sure you don't fall off when things get tough. I would not be here without accountability and support. I even said, the very first time I said hi, I had to get people around me to finally do it or I wouldn't be able to. You need the accountability and support. Anyone who's trying to do it alone, insane. And accountability and support could be anything and anyone, right? You could just ask a friend to hold you accountable. But you do need to incorporate it. If you have the training wheels of accountability and support combined with this, you will crush it. When it comes to the actual letting go, there's a few things to keep in mind, okay? For those of you who are in the mentoring, you're gonna get the exact guided releases that I use myself, but I'll explain it for everyone. But you're gonna get, for each of these levels, a guided meditation that hits on it. And it sounds obnoxious, but this really introduces the first principle, when letting go. So this is done through mindfulness-based meditation, okay? But when letting go, the last thing you want to do is engage the mind. You don't want to engage the mind. It happens on a felt sensation level. So when I'm personally letting go, what people try to do is they try to guide themselves or think themselves into it, and that's terrible. I want to quiet my mind, not even worry about thinking. So this is why I do guided meditations, guided releases. And it sounds obnoxious, but I will listen to these exact same ones myself. No extra ones, literally just what's in the mentoring, and I will listen to my voice guide me through it for that reason. Okay? So whatever it is you do, like when you are letting go, disengage the mind completely. Okay? Now, for everyone here too, if you do want a free meditation that you can start with, just go to, and you can write this down and go to it after on your computer or whatnot, go to transformationmastery.com and you'll see a quick redirect, and it'll redirect you to a free meditation that you can get. Okay, so after this event, if this resonates with you, go get that free meditation. It's a very basic one, but just get that one, try it out with what I'm telling you here. So when you listen to it, disengage the mind. Next thing, mindfulness versus concentration. Classic meditation is you want to concentrate on the now, right? Or concentrate on a mantra. And you want to basically concentrate enough that all your worries or stress or whatnot kind of fades away. And that's an amazing first step. But the approach here is very different. Remember what we talked about before. There's the movement towards or the movement away from. What's concentration? Oh, I don't feel too good. Let me focus on the now. And I'm going to keep focusing until I forget about all this, right? Like if all of you focus right now, right here, focus on my finger. If you keep looking long enough, do you see the rest of the room? No. That's concentration based. And what happens is, for most people, they realize this, it just becomes this temporary escape from their problems. They concentrate for 10 minutes, that's their meditation, and then they stop and they're back in. Okay? Better than nothing, but here's what's better. Instead of concentrating on, say, the now or a mantra or a spot on the wall to avoid your problems, what about focusing on your problems, letting go of them so there's nothing to focus on to escape? That's mindfulness. So instead of now, mantra, we focus on the stuff we're trying to avoid. And it's the same approach with getting triggered. The stuff we don't experience, that's where you got to go. The things you're running away from, that's where you got to go. That's mindfulness. Okay? Now, the way you're going to do it, and again, transformationmastery.com, get the free meditation, is seated position. Okay? I like doing it like this. Don't cross your legs, both feet planted. You want to communicate to yourself that you're really grounded and you can handle whatever you experience, whatever comes up. I also like the palms face down. Okay? Just very grounded. And when I do it, eyes closed. Okay? So when you do it later, eyes closed. Why? Because you don't want to get sucked into the external. You want all your awareness internally. Okay? As I guide you through it, the things you're going to do are going to trigger different feelings within. And your job once more is, let me sink into it, let me experience it, and let me breathe my way through it. When there's charge, when there's stuff that comes up, you've got to notice yourself. Am I stuffing it down or clenching? Or relaxing in. Okay? And then you'll see me guide you through it with the tactile things. But those are some key mindsets so you do it the right way. Now, one other thing. When you're going through it, it's very common that people are like, oh, you were talking about this, but my mind drifted off and I'm thinking about this now. That's fine. Your job is whatever you're thinking about, your mantra is, we're talking about mantras, remind yourself of this, what are the sensations? If I'm talking about some other topic and you think of this and you're triggered by it, great, what are the sensations? What are the sensations? And here's another one. Sometimes people are like, I don't feel anything. Here's the question. What does that feel like? What does not feeling anything feel like? You can't not feel anything or you'd be dead. Your body would be cold. Right? So, oh, what am I feeling? Or if there's frustration, okay, what does that frustration feel like? Tune into that. And once more, you release the charge. And the way to think of this too is, imagine there's all like these strings like attached to you, or these like cords. They're all pulling your strings. You're pulled in different directions. What's letting go? Severing that. And this is important. In life, there is such a thing as a physical connection, but then there's, not to get a little too hippy-dippy, an energetic connection. So here's an example. Say you go through an experience as a kid where you experience trauma, right? Maybe in class, like I said, you speak up and the classroom laughs. Then you live your life and you move on. Physically, that event happened a long time ago, very distant. But energetically, there's still the link. It's still running you. That's something you want to sever. The same with different fears that run people. A key thing when letting go is sinking into those fears, getting triggered by it, and freeing yourself from that energetic link. So a common one is people are really afraid of, say, being alone. Right? There's a few core fears. One is fear of being alone. And I'm curious here, I'll ask you which one you resonate with the most. Fear of being alone, fear of not being good enough, right? Not having what it takes, fear of not living up to your potential, fear of being bad and toxic. Fear of being alone. Who resonates more with that one? Raise your hand. The fear of forever being alone. Cool. Surprising, right? Based on people working on their social skills. You'd think a lot more would be afraid of being alone, or what are you doing here? Fear of not being good enough. Something wrong with you, not having what it takes. Fear of not living up to your potential. Fear of being bad, toxic. Yep. Okay. Now, those are just a few, but we all have these, you could say, more universal fears. And then there's, depending on our conditionings, we discuss more specific ones. Now, here's my advice, right? What people try to do is they're like, oh, there's these fears, how do I overcome it? What I tell clients, like say someone's like really scared of being alone, and there's the craving of, say, having a partner. It's like, I can't be alone, I need a partner, I need someone, I need someone. I would actually have them sink into it. Okay, what if you never get a partner? What if that's true? What if you are alone the rest of your life? And just sinking into that, you're gonna start feeling, oh, the triggerness kick in. Whatever it is your fear here, right? Like, what if you never live up to your potential? What if that's it? What if you see other people go after your dreams, but not you? What if you don't have what it takes? What if there is actually something wrong with you? You're not strong enough, you're not smart enough, you don't have it, and you'll just never truly succeed. What if that's true? Sinking into that, you're going to feel something perhaps getting poked at. That's one of those energetic links. And then by triggering it and letting go of it, you free yourself. Now that doesn't mean now that you're going to go in that direction. That's what we think, if I let go of the fear, won't I go there? No, no, no. Your intention is still, for example, to succeed, to meet a partner, whatnot. But now it's coming from a, I'm playing to win, this is what I want, versus in reaction to the opposite. So it's severing those links. Another key link that runs people comes down to forgiveness, right? Where, this is the classic story I like sharing to illustrate this. Maybe you've heard this one before. I had a client a few years ago. He moved from Los Angeles to Ukraine, right? He was doing movies and stuff. He was in his 40s, and he was still really triggered and resentful towards his parents, but more specifically his mom. Okay, why? Because as a kid, he wanted to do music, be creative, but his parents were very traditional. It's like, look, you're gonna be a lawyer, you're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna be very serious, none of this music stuff, right? And I think he had siblings who, they followed that, they did well, and he's kind of like the odd one out trying to do, you know, movies, not music, movies on the more creative side. And it got so bad that he's like, you know what, I'm moving across the world, moved to Ukraine, and he's doing some movie projects there, yet, physically, far away. He still feels the same pressure and self-sabotage and even feels guilty, even though he's far away. Why? Because although he's physically away, there's still the energetic connection that he has to let go of. Same with the past. different events, people, right? Things that, you know, might have happened to you, things people did or didn't do, they did you wrong, so on and so forth. People tend to like physically distance themselves, but until you let go, that event or that person will still have that energetic control over you. And not just other people, but yourself. Younger versions of you that might have not done better, not done what it takes, so on and so forth. Oh, I'm grown up now. There's still the link. And for that there, on the more resentful, so on and so forth, it's forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. So think about it. That person, say someone really did you wrong. Can you forgive them 100%? Guaranteed? Probably a little bit of triggered. And what are those sensations saying? No! That's what you're going to want to start processing. Until it's a yes, and it's not a you making yourself say yes, it's an authentic yes, you're being pimped out. There's still the energetic connection. Now here's the thing, key subtlety with forgiveness. Forgiving someone or something does not mean approving of it. Does not mean, say someone did you wrong, there shouldn't be consequences. It doesn't mean now you have to be friends with them. Forgiveness is a 100% act for who? You and only you. It has nothing to do with them. Forgiveness is whatever impact they still have on you, releasing that. And you will sense, key, you will sense when you've truly severed one of those links that's just, or chains even, energetic chain you could say, you'll sense you've severed it when you look, say, back at that event or that person or that fear, and it's just information. The charge behind it is gone. And that's another great audit. Where in my life is there some charge? And that's what letting go is instead of stuffing it down, it's like, let's be with it and let's start releasing this charge. Right? If I ask you, what did you eat for breakfast? Do you get triggered? No. Right? It's like, oh, I just ate this. It's information. That's what happens around things that run you. What do you think about that person? Oh yeah, they did me wrong. That was not cool. But there's not the charge behind it. Oh, what about that fear? Oh yeah, I don't really want to be alone. I want to, you know, be with someone or so on and so forth. I want to live up to my potential. But it's no longer the same charge that runs you. Do this, you start being free. Two other key things. I'm sure you've heard the saying, if you don't have a plan for yourself, someone else has a plan for you, right? And we always tend to think, oh, it's, I guess, the government, people, like, yeah. But you know who really has a plan for you? All of those things you've suppressed, past trauma. Pull in your strings. You're in that little invisible prison. That has a plan for you until you address it. And then one more key perspective that really illustrates what letting go is remember this. In life, everyone has goals, and I would highly suggest whatever your goal is, as we discussed here before, don't be stubborn, don't be dumb, ask for help. Whatever that is, right? I want to do this thing, I want to do this thing, I want to be arts, like go get an art coach, like ask for help no matter what. But you got to differentiate between the software and the hardware. If you think of yourself as a computer, best way to explain letting go. Say you're a computer, right? You're a, whatever, an iMac or whatnot. There's the hardware, that's you. And now there's all this software that you can install, right? Hey, there's the art program, there's the cooking software, there's the business software, there's the social software, there's all this software. People do is they find out about all this and it's exciting, it's new, it's flashy, and they rush in and just install. And then they're surprised when it doesn't really work for them. Like, well, wait, what's wrong? I installed the software. Maybe I need to install more. And they double down on installing more software. Yet what they should have done is run the antivirus. It doesn't matter how much software you install. If there's a virus on the hardware, you're screwed. That's what we're talking about here. That's what letting go does. It's running the antivirus so all this software you install finally works. And it works the right way.
Like, this program is such a game changer. The way everything's structured and the material, it's been already, even for me, it's just been, I'm noticing a crazy change in the way that my whole life's like playing out.
What you put together is just incredible. There's nothing like that.
I've just jumped like a million levels. It's just been a complete 180 for my experience of existing. That's awesome.
It's just been so huge in terms of so many of the things I'm finally understanding and realizing and epiphanies I'm having.
What you do is a huge inspiration to me, and I think it's one of the most beautiful things you can give to another human in this entire world.
You've saved my in life, man. I'm telling you, this is real, man.
Sometimes all it takes is just one person who believes in you. Find people who are where you are in life and model them, work with them. I would not be here if I didn't have people who held me accountable.
Wow.
I just felt a click and things are changing.
This program was just top notch.
Seriously, like this is a masterpiece. This is perfect.
Everything, the way it's set up, the live calls, like all the support from the coaches is incredible.
It's been nuts.
I just had my tears of joy.
This was the best decisions I ever made.
Thank you for creating something wonderful like this.
This program was phenomenal.
This program was amazing.
This program has definitely changed my life.
I know for a fact I'm in the right place.
This is exactly what I was expecting from the program.
It's been spectacular.
I feel really lucky to have found you.
Thank you so much, Julien. It's worth every dollar.